Friends, welcome to another exciting and informative video. If you're a fan of gripping thrillers, emotional dramas, or shocking true stories, then get ready, because today's movie discussion is going to keep you hooked from start to finish. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any updates on trending movies, underrated gems, or in-depth reviews. We talk about everything cinema here, whether it's box office hits, small indie films, or intense stories that leave you thinking long after the credits roll. In today's video, we are going to dive deep into the 2021 movie Girl in the Basement. This film is not just a typical drama. It's a dark, emotional, and disturbing story inspired by real events that shocked the world. It tells the kind of story that will leave you speechless, make you angry, and break your heart, all at the same time. And that's exactly why this film deserves our full attention. So what exactly is Girl in the Basement about? Where can you watch it? Who's in the cast, and how well did they perform? What went into making this intense and emotional film? We'll cover it all in today's video. Whether you're someone who has already seen the movie or you're just curious to know more before watching, I promise you'll get plenty of interesting and behind-the-scenes insights in the next few minutes. We'll begin by talking about the storyline, what the movie is based on, the themes it explores, and why it struck a chord with so many viewers. Of course, don't worry. I'll avoid giving away any major spoilers. Then we'll move on to where and how you can actually watch this film today, whether it's available on an OTT streaming platform like Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, or if it airs on any satellite TV channels. I'll give you the latest info so you know exactly where to find it. Next, we'll explore the movie's technical aspects. How did the production come together? What happened during pre-production? Where was the movie filmed? What kind of challenges did the team face while bringing such a sensitive and disturbing true story to the screen? We'll also take a look at the post-production process, editing, sound design, and music, because all these elements played a major role in making this film as impactful as it is. We're also going to talk numbers. Yes, we'll discuss the budget and viewership. While this movie wasn't a traditional box office release, since it was made for television, it still managed to create a huge buzz and got a lot of attention. So, we'll see how it performed overall in terms of audience reactions and critical reviews. Was it well received? Did it stir up controversy? We'll touch on all of that. And let's not forget about the cast. The performances in Girl in the Basement are one of its strongest points. I'll introduce you to the main actors, the characters they played, and how they portrayed such emotionally challenging roles. From the lead actress's powerful performance to the disturbing role of the antagonist, we'll break it all down and talk about which performances stood out and why. On top of that, I'll be sharing some interesting facts and trivia you might not know, like what inspired the movie, what changes were made for dramatic effect, and how close it stays to the real-life story. Finally, I'll give you a quick review from my side. Just a short and honest opinion about the overall impact of the movie, what worked well, and who I'd recommend it to. So, friends, make sure you stick around till the end of the video, because there's a lot to unpack in this story, and you won't want to miss any of the details. Girl in the Basement isn't just a movie. It's a powerful reminder of how real-life stories can be more haunting than fiction. So grab a snack, settle in, and let's get started. Plot and narrative ***. Alright friends, now let's get into the heart of Girl in the Basement, the story. And let me tell you right away, this is not your typical popcorn flick with a feel-good beginning, middle, and end. This one punches you in the gut, drags you into a dark, suffocating world, and holds nothing back. But it does all this while keeping you glued to the screen, wondering what's going to happen next and how on earth the characters will survive it. The movie starts in what looks like an ordinary suburban setting. A teenage girl named Sara is counting the days until her 18th birthday. Like any normal teenager, she's excited to finally gain her freedom, to get out from under the roof of her overbearing, strict father, Don. At first, it feels like we're in familiar territory. The classic parent versus teenager dynamic, the rebellious daughter who just wants to live her life, and the father who insists it's for her own good. But then bam, the story takes a horrifying turn and everything flips upside down. Just when Sara thinks she's about to break free, her father does something no one expects. He lures her into the basement and locks her there. That's it. One moment you think you're watching a family drama, and the next, you're deep in a psychological thriller that feels too real for comfort. And from here on out, the movie does not follow your usual Hollywood three-act structure. It becomes a slow-burning descent into darkness. Time passes, but not in the way you'd expect. The story doesn't show time progressing through neat labels or obvious transitions. Instead, you feel it. You see it on Sara's face. You hear it in her voice. The way she grows older, physically and emotionally, while stuck in this horrifying place. It's painful to watch. Years go by. She's not alone in that basement forever. And I'm not just talking about her father visiting. She ends up giving birth. Yes, inside that basement. To her father's child. And if that sentence made you stop and stare, that's exactly the kind of emotional impact this movie delivers again and again. The narrative cleverly keeps us locked inside that basement with her. The world outside keeps spinning, but for Sara, time is standing still. The storytelling becomes claustrophobic on purpose. You're not just watching her story, you're living it with her. Every desperate attempt to escape, every flicker of hope, and every crushing moment when that hope is snatched away. The perspective is tight, personal, and brutally honest. No fancy tricks, no flashbacks or dream sequences. Just raw, continuous suffering that slowly builds toward resistance. And yet there are small victories. Little acts of rebellion. Secret moments where Sara shows she hasn't given up. She hides her pain, she protects her child, and somehow she holds onto her sanity. This becomes the emotional engine of the film. It's not about action or dramatic plot twists. It's about survival. The real drama is in watching a human spirit refuse to break, even when everything around it says it should. One of the most intense turning points is when Sara starts pushing back. Not physically at first, but emotionally. The power dynamics shift ever so slightly. It's no longer just about the monster holding her captive. It becomes about the woman who refuses to give him complete control. These moments are subtle but powerful, and they hit even harder because of how much you've endured with her. And when the story finally begins to shift toward the possibility of escape, the tension doesn't drop. If anything, it skyrockets. You're not sure if this is real or just another cruel trick. The final scenes build so much suspense that you'll probably catch yourself holding your breath. It's not just about whether she gets out, it's about whether she still can. Whether she's strong enough. Whether the world outside is even ready for the truth. So, does this movie follow a conventional structure? Absolutely not. It doesn't care about that. It throws the rulebook out the window and instead dares you to sit through an experience that feels real, raw, and emotionally exhausting in the best way. It's not an easy story to watch, but it's one you won't forget. And the way the narrative unfolds, from innocence to terror to resilience, is what makes Girl in the Basement so haunting, so emotional, and so incredibly powerful. Character development ****. Let's talk about the people who carry this entire story. The characters. Now, Girl in the Basement isn't just built around what happens, but who it happens to. The emotional weight of this film rests on its characters. And wow, they are crafted in a way that pulls you in, shakes you up, and leaves you thinking about them long after the movie ends. First up, we've got Sara. And let me tell you, she is not just the victim in this story. She starts off as your typical teenage girl, full of dreams, defiance, and the urge to break free from her strict home life. You can sense that fiery spirit in her from the beginning. She's eager to get out into the world, go to a concert, live life on her own terms. And then, just like that, everything is ripped away from her. But this is where her character becomes so much more than what you expect. Sara doesn't stay stuck in one emotional lane. She transforms, and not in the way most movie characters do. Her transformation is deep, psychological, slow, and painful. We see her pushed to the absolute edge of human endurance. She goes from frightened and helpless to quietly rebellious and strong, all while trapped in the most horrifying circumstances imaginable. What makes her arc powerful is that she doesn't suddenly become a hero with a big speech or a bold escape. Her power is in her endurance. Her growth is in her ability to protect her child, to outlast her abuser, and to never let him completely steal her soul. There's a scene where just the look in her eyes tells you she's changed. that she's planning something. It's subtle but powerful. Now let's shift over to Don, the father. And calling him controlling at the start feels like an understatement. He's not your usual tough dad character. No. This guy is chilling from the very beginning. The way he speaks, the way he watches Sara's every move. You can feel that something is off. He believes he's doing what's right. He says it's about keeping his family safe, about being in control, about protecting his daughter from the world. But really it's about power. It's about domination. What's terrifying is how normal he tries to appear on the outside. That mask of concerned father slowly slips, revealing something far darker underneath. And the movie doesn't make him cartoonishly evil. It shows how abusers manipulate, control, and destroy while pretending to love. Don doesn't really change as a character, and that's the scary part. He stays locked in his twisted beliefs from beginning to end. In a way, he represents the type of person who never sees themselves as the villain. He justifies every action, convinces himself he's doing what's necessary. And that warped sense of righteousness is what makes him so deeply disturbing. His relationship with Sara shifts as she grows stronger. He tries to maintain control, but you can see his fear of losing it start to crack through. That silent power struggle becomes one of the most intense emotional battles in the film. Now let's talk about Sara's mother and sister. Their characters might not get as much screen time, but they are crucial to the story. The mother is caught in a heartbreaking place. She's living with a man she fears but doesn't fully understand. She suspects something is wrong, but the lies and manipulation run so deep, she can't find her way out. Her arc is more passive, but emotionally loaded. There's guilt, confusion, and helplessness wrapped into every scene she's in. And the sister. She's like a mirror of what Sara could have had. Living above ground, unaware of the nightmare unfolding just feet below. One of the most powerful dynamics in the film is between Sara and her child. This relationship brings out a completely new side of her. Motherhood becomes her strength, her reason to survive, and eventually her path to resistance. Watching her interact with her child while still a prisoner adds layers to her character that go beyond words. She has to be a protector, a teacher, a nurturer, and all while she herself is still trapped. It's heartbreaking and inspiring all at once. Even the side characters, like the police officers, neighbors, or family friends, add to the complexity of the story. They show how abuse can be invisible, how an entire community can miss the signs. They're not evil or careless. They're just not looking closely enough. And that's what makes the story hit even harder. Every character in this film serves a purpose, and their development feels painfully real. No one is perfect. No one is a caricature. They're messy, complicated, and emotionally rich. You don't just watch their journeys, you feel them. Whether it's fear, anger, hopelessness, or the smallest spark of hope, it all comes through the way these characters are written and performed. That's what makes this story not just disturbing but unforgettable. For performances ***. Now let's get into the performances, because if Girl in the Basement hits you hard, it's not just the story doing the heavy lifting. It's the actors. This cast doesn't just play characters, they become them. Every look, every word, every moment feels raw, real, and completely in sync with the emotional chaos that this film unleashes. Let's start with the powerhouse at the center of it all. Stefanie Scott as Sara. If you've ever seen her in lighter roles before, forget everything you thought you knew. In this film, she goes to emotional depths that are honestly jaw-dropping. Stefanie doesn't just act scared, broken, and hopeful. She lives those emotions. The transformation she undergoes is stunning. In the beginning, she's all teenage attitude and eye rolls. But as the story gets darker, so does her performance. She carries the weight of isolation, trauma, and resilience with such honesty that you feel like you're right there with her in that basement. And the most powerful parts. They're not always in the dialogue. It's in the silence. Her expressions. Her body language. The way she looks at her child, or stares into space after another visit from her father. That's what makes her performance unforgettable. It's not showy, it's human. And then there's Judd Nelson as Don. Yes, that Judd Nelson, the rebellious cool guy from The Breakfast Club, is now playing one of the most terrifying fathers ever put on screen. And he's chilling. What makes his performance so effective is how controlled it is. He doesn't storm around or scream constantly. He's calm, calculated, manipulative. He plays Don with this eerie sense of authority, like he truly believes he's the one holding everything together, even as he's destroying lives. The scariest part. He never thinks he's the villain. Judd brings out this subtle kind of madness that creeps under your skin. One minute he's acting like the loving, protective father, and the next he's locking the basement door without a shred of remorse. It's haunting. He doesn't play a monster. He plays a man who thinks he's right, and that's what makes him terrifying. Then there's Joely Fisher, who plays Sara's mother. Her performance is full of quiet pain. She's not in every scene, but whenever she appears, you feel the emotional tug. She plays a woman who's stuck in a marriage with a man she fears, stuck in denial, stuck with the guilt of not knowing what's happening right under her nose. Her portrayal brings out a kind of helpless heartbreak. You can see her trying to piece things together, but she's been emotionally manipulated for so long that she doesn't even trust her own instincts. Joely brings this complex vulnerability that adds another layer to the film's emotional depth. We also have the supporting cast: Sara's younger sister, the officers, and even the neighbors. Each of them adds to the realism of the world. No one feels like a throwaway character. Everyone adds a brushstroke to the painting of Sara's life. Even the briefest appearances have weight. The sister, especially, brings a unique contrast. She lives in the same house, breathes the same air, yet has no idea what's happening just below her feet. Her innocence and normal life highlight just how abnormal and horrifying Sara's situation is. And then there's the child. That's right, Sara's baby, who grows up in the basement with her. While the child actor isn't delivering Oscar speeches or dramatic monologues, their presence brings a huge emotional impact. Every time they appear on screen, the stakes feel higher. Stefanie Scott's interactions with this child are some of the most heart-wrenching moments in the film. It's not just about surviving anymore, it's about protecting someone else. And those scenes, they'll get you. They'll really get you. What's amazing about this cast is how well they play off each other. There's a rhythm to their interactions, a tension that never lets up. You can feel it in every glance between Sara and Don. You can sense the emotional distance in Sara's moments with her mother. And when the characters finally collide in key scenes, the performances explode. You're not watching a script being read. You're watching a battle of wills unfold right in front of you. So if you're wondering what makes this story feel so real, so emotional, so brutal, it's not just the script. It's these actors pouring everything into their roles. They make you believe it. They make you feel it. And that's why, even after the credits roll, these performances will stick with you like a bruise that hasn't faded. 5. Direction ****. Alright friends, let's talk about the brains behind the operation. The director. In Girl in the Basement, the director doesn't just tell a story, she traps you inside it. Elisabeth Röhm takes a true crime-inspired concept and transforms it into an emotional pressure cooker. You're not watching from a safe distance. You're in that basement. You're in that silence. You're in that fear. And that's because of her direction. Quiet, steady, and sharp like a needle. Let's start with the tone. This isn't a horror movie with jump scares or dramatic violins blaring every 5 minutes. No, this is a slow, simmering type of horror, the kind that feels real. Elisabeth Röhm leans hard into psychological dread. She doesn't need special effects or flashy tricks. She just creates a space where everything feels slightly off, slightly too quiet, too tense. From the very first scene, you know something's wrong, even before anything happens. That's intentional. That's control. That's direction working at its finest. Now let's talk mood. This is where Röhm really tightens her grip. She sets up an atmosphere that is so claustrophobic, so emotionally heavy, you practically forget to breathe. The lighting is dim, the colors are muted, and the silence becomes its own kind of soundtrack. You can almost hear the walls breathing. There's this constant sense that something terrible is coming, even in the calmest scenes. Especially in the calmest scenes. And the basement. It's not just a set, it becomes a character. The way it's shot, lit, and framed makes it feel like it's closing in on you. You could take one look at those scenes and know. This isn't just about physical entrapment, it's psychological too. Now let's get into her shot choices. Röhm doesn't go wide very often. She keeps things tight. Close-ups, medium shots, lots of handheld movement when emotions rise. It feels intimate, invasive, and personal. When Sara is locked up, the camera rarely lets you see anything beyond her world. That's by design. You're trapped with her. There are moments where the shot lingers, just a little too long, on her face, her surroundings, or even the stillness of the room. That patience. That confidence in stillness. That's the director saying, you're going to sit with this. You're going to feel it. And pacing, oh yes, the pacing. This film is not in a hurry. And that's a good thing. Röhm resists the urge to rush through trauma or speed up for the sake of drama. Instead, she lets the pain stretch. She lets the silence settle in. And when tension starts to build, she doesn't hit you with a sudden cut or explosion. She just slowly turns the screw. Scene by scene, the pressure mounts. It's like being in a room where the walls are moving closer inch by inch. And you don't even realize it until they're pressing against your chest. Another thing Röhm does incredibly well is perspective. She doesn't give you an omniscient view of the story. You're not floating above the characters. You're down there in the dirt with them. Especially with Sara. The film is practically told through her eyes. Even when she's not speaking, the camera's with her, watching what she watches, reacting how she might react. And that means when something horrific happens, you experience it from her emotional perspective. Not just as an observer but as someone who's living it. And don't forget the contrasts Röhm builds. Upstairs versus downstairs. Light versus dark. Freedom versus captivity. These visual and emotional contrasts become more than just aesthetic. They become part of the story's DNA. Upstairs life is bright, spacious, and careless. Downstairs is shadowy, suffocating, and haunted by silence. That kind of juxtaposition doesn't just happen. It's carefully crafted. Let's not ignore the rhythm she creates between characters either. Röhm knows when to let conversations breathe and when to let silence speak louder. When Dawn and Sara are in a room together, the tension is unbearable. Not because anyone is yelling, but because of the pauses, the glances, the restrained energy. She creates these moments of quiet psychological warfare that are way scarier than any shouting match. Elisabeth Röhm also handles something really tricky. Storytelling restraint. She could have sensationalized everything, leaned into the horror, or turned this into a melodramatic spectacle. But she doesn't. She keeps it grounded. She focuses on the people, the pain, the emotional truth. That's a bold choice, and it works. It makes the film not just disturbing but human. So yes, every mood swing, every ounce of dread, every emotional punch, that's direction. That's a director who knows exactly what kind of experience she wants to give you, and delivers it with laser precision. This isn't just storytelling, it's psychological immersion, guided by someone who clearly knew just how far to push without ever looking away. Cinematography ***. Let's talk about the camera, because in Girl in the Basement it doesn't just show you the story, it pulls you into it. The cinematography in this film does something very specific and very clever. It doesn't dazzle with sweeping drone shots or epic vistas, because that's not the world this movie lives in. This is a world of confinement, secrets, and emotional survival. And the camera reflects that perfectly. The first thing you'll notice is how tight the shots are. The framing is often so close, so intimate, that you feel like you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with the characters, especially Sara. When she's trapped, the camera is trapped with her. There's no escape for her, and visually, there's no escape for you. It creates a kind of visual claustrophobia that's just brilliant. You start noticing every crack in the wall, every flicker of the basement light, every inch of the limited space she moves in. It makes you feel like you've been stuck down there for years too, and not just watching from the safety of your couch. The lighting is its own silent storyteller. It shifts subtly but deliberately. In the basement, it's dim, yellowed, and almost sickly. It doesn't feel like movie lighting. It feels like what you'd actually find in an old, hidden room that's never supposed to see the light of day. That alone sets the mood. There are shadows everywhere. Corners you can't quite see into. Sometimes Sara's face is half lit, half in darkness, and it says everything about her situation without a word of dialogue. Even when the camera moves upstairs, things aren't exactly vibrant. It's softer, cooler, almost like the air's easier to breathe, but there's still a gray undertone. Like something's not right, even in the safe spaces. And then there's how the cinematographer plays with angles. You'll notice a lot of low-angle shots when Don is around. It makes him seem larger, looming, inescapable. It's not done in a flashy way. It's subtle but effective. He dominates the frame even when he's just standing still. Meanwhile, Sara is often shot slightly from above in the early scenes, emphasizing her vulnerability. But as the story progresses and she starts gaining strength in her quiet, steady way, the camera starts to level with her. By the time she's protecting her child and fighting back in her own way, you notice the angles start to flatten out. She's no longer seen from above, she's standing her ground. Now let's talk movement, or rather, the lack of it. The cinematography in this film doesn't rely on lots of camera tricks. You won't see flashy spins or fast pans. What you will see is deliberate, patient movement. When the camera does move, it's usually to follow a character slowly, like a quiet observer that's tiptoeing through trauma. When Sara walks through the basement, the camera walks with her. Not ahead, not behind, right beside her. You feel every slow step. You feel the tension in the stillness. And yes, there are visually striking moments, just not the kind you usually expect. There's one moment where the only light in the basement is from a small window near the ceiling, casting long shadows across the room. It's quiet, it's haunting, and it speaks volumes. Another powerful shot is when Sara is cradling her baby, sitting on the floor, and the camera slowly backs away, showing just how small and fragile their world is. It's not grand, but it hits you in the chest. Even color grading is used smartly here. The muted tones help sell the emotional numbness that Sara begins to feel. There's no bright color to escape into. No warm tones of comfort. Everything looks drained, which mirrors how she's feeling. Drained, faded, worn down. And when she starts to regain a sense of hope, the lighting adjusts with her. Just a little. Just enough for you to notice if you're paying attention. The cinematography doesn't scream, it whispers. And those whispers get under your skin. What's really impressive is how the cinematography works so quietly in the background, never drawing attention to itself, but always shaping your emotional reaction. It's not trying to look beautiful for beauty's sake. It's trying to feel honest. Real. The camera doesn't make you feel like you're watching a film. It makes you feel like you're caught in the middle of something that was never supposed to be seen. And that, more than anything, is the magic trick this cinematography pulls off. 7. Editing and pacing ***. Now here's where things get really interesting. The editing and pacing of Girl in the Basement. This isn't one of those stories that races out the gate, throws in a dozen plot twists, and speeds to the credits. No. This is a slow burn. A methodical, psychological roller coaster that traps you in the moment, not because it's racing forward, but because it won't let you look away. And the editor. Oh, they knew exactly what they were doing. First, let's talk flow. The film doesn't rely on flashy cuts or constant scene changes to keep you hooked. It uses the opposite. The transitions are smooth but calculated. Scenes are allowed to linger, not in a draggy, boring way, but in that "why is my heart racing and nothing's even happening" kind of way. The editors let conversations breathe. They give silences time to echo. When a character says something awful, or there's a moment of tension, the film doesn't immediately cut away. Says, watches. It dares you to sit with the discomfort. That right there. That's bold editing. Now about the pacing. This film takes its time. And it should. It doesn't rush into the horror of Sara's situation. Lets you get to know her first. Lets you feel the shift as things start to go wrong. At the beginning, it plays almost like a typical family drama. Teen angst, strict parents, rebellious spirit. But once Sara ends up in that basement, the pacing tightens like a vice. Time stretches, days blur. You start to feel the monotony, the suffocating repetition of her life in that space. And yet, the film never loses you. Because every scene adds a little more pressure. Every cut between upstairs and downstairs feels like a stab of irony. Life moving on above while Sara is frozen below. The editing really shines when it switches perspectives without confusing the audience. We're mostly with Sara, but we occasionally jump to her family, her mother, her sister. These moments are spaced out perfectly. Just when you start feeling completely buried with Sara, the film gives you a glimpse of the world outside. But even those glimpses are edited to feel disconnected and cold, like the house itself has no idea what horrors are happening beneath its floorboards. That contrast. It hits hard, and it's all about how those cuts are timed. Another strong point. The emotional rhythm. The film doesn't just cut for plot, it cuts for feeling. Scenes of psychological torment are followed by quieter, heartbreaking moments. There are no abrupt tonal shifts. The transitions from tension to sorrow to despair are fluid, almost like a song that changes key without you noticing until it's already gotten under your skin. And when there are moments of hope or resistance, tiny flickers, they're timed just right to make you feel like you can breathe again, even if just for a second. You'll also notice how time itself is treated. The editing plays with time in a very grounded way. There are no big flashy time jumps. Instead, the film marks the passing of years with subtle cues. A change in the child's appearance, a crack in the wall that wasn't there before, a calendar. The pacing doesn't scream time is moving, but you feel it. You feel the weight of it. And that slow grind is exactly what makes the emotional payoff so much more powerful. And the tension, oh the tension. The way scenes are trimmed and timed builds anxiety without needing a single special effect. A door creaking open, a heavy footstep, a look from Dawn. These moments are cut with such precision that they land like thunder, even in total silence. You keep expecting something awful, and even when nothing happens, the way the scene ends makes your stomach twist. In a movie like this, pacing is everything. Go too fast and it feels shallow. Go too slow and you risk losing the audience. But Girl in the Basement threads the needle. Lets things simmer. Holds back when you expect it to explode. And that restraint, that patience, it's a masterclass in editing rhythm. The film doesn't just move, it breathes, it waits, and when it strikes, it leaves a mark. So if you're wondering why this movie lingers with you long after it's over, part of that magic is in how it's been cut together. The editor doesn't just arrange scenes, they shape how you feel every moment. Whether it's dread, despair, or just the hopeless tick of passing time, the pacing pulls you through it all without ever letting go. Soundtrack and score ***. Now let's crank up the volume. Or in this case, maybe let's just listen very, very closely. Because in Girl in the Basement, the music isn't loud, flashy, or designed to slap you in the face with emotion. Instead, it creeps. It whispers. It crawls under your skin and sets up camp without ever raising its voice. The soundtrack and score in this film are like silent emotional puppeteers, pulling strings you didn't even know were there until you're crying, sweating, or gripping the edge of your seat wondering why your heart's racing in a completely quiet scene. This isn't the kind of score you're going to hum on your way to the kitchen. There are no big, heroic swells or catchy melodies. Instead, what you get is atmosphere. Pure, suffocating, tension-soaked atmosphere. The music here knows its role. It doesn't take over scenes, it sinks into them. It's the emotional glue holding every second of dread, anxiety, and fragile hope together. And when I say it blends seamlessly with the story, I mean it disappears into the cracks of the walls, into the shadows, into every corner of that dreadful basement. Let's talk about the silence, though. 'Cause oh yes, this film knows when not to play music. There are stretches of silence that are so perfectly timed, you could cut the air with a knife. And the silence is not accidental. It's strategic. Makes you lean in. Builds anticipation. When you expect some background track to kick in and it doesn't, your brain starts screaming, "What's about to happen?" And often, it's in those dead silent moments that the emotional weight lands the hardest. Look. A door slamming. Soft cry. Without music telling you how to feel, you're forced to feel it yourself, raw and unfiltered. Now, when the music does show up, it's subtle but chilling. We're talking low, droning tones that hum like a threat in the background. Long, drawn-out notes that don't resolve but just hang there, like the feeling of something terrible lurking just out of sight. These sonic choices are not there to entertain you. They're there to trap you. They mirror Sara's isolation, her fear, her confusion. The score doesn't announce danger. It just makes your spine tingle with the suggestion of it. The composers understand that less is more, and in this case, way more. What's really brilliant is how certain sonic patterns return at just the right moments. Not necessarily full-blown musical themes, but textures. Pulsing bass note. Faint echo. These little motifs subtly remind you of past trauma as new trauma unfolds. It's like the music is keeping a log of everything that's happened and softly reminding you, you've been here before. It creates an emotional continuity that builds the tension with every repetition. And in contrast, whenever there's even a hint of light, some rare moment of hope or comfort, the music lifts just barely. You might not even notice it unless you're paying attention, but the shift is there. The tones soften. The atmosphere opens up just a touch. And that tiny shift becomes huge because of everything you've sat through before. It's like emotional alchemy, turning the smallest relief into something that feels gigantic. That's the power of restraint, and this score masters it. One of the most striking aspects of the sound design is how the music interacts with the environment. You'll often hear background hums that you're not even sure are part of the score, or just the basement's fluorescent lights buzzing. That kind of blurring between score and setting is genius because it makes the entire space feel alive. The basement isn't just a room, it's a soundscape. It hums, it breathes, it threatens. And the music never fights it. It becomes part of it. There's also something worth saying about how the score respects the subject matter. With a story this dark, it would have been easy to overdo the emotional cues, to manipulate the audience with swelling violins or overbearing strings. But this film plays it differently. The score isn't screaming, "Feel sad now," or "Be scared here." It's just present, like a shadow in the corner of your eye. It respects the trauma. It gives the characters room to exist without overshadowing them. It holds your hand quietly while the rest of the story punches you in the gut. So, no, you won't find any catchy pop songs or standout theme songs in Girl in the Basement. But what you will find is one of the most finely tuned sonic environments built for emotional impact. This isn't music you hear, it's music you feel. And by the end of the film, you won't even realize how much it's been steering your emotions the entire time. But trust me, it has. Quietly, powerfully, and with surgical precision. Themes and messages ***. Alright, let's dive deep because Girl in the Basement isn't just a story about one girl trapped in a dark place. It's a tangled web of bigger ideas wrapped in one intense narrative. This film doesn't just slap on a few obvious messages and call it a day. Instead, it slowly unwraps layers about power, control, trauma, and the quiet fight for freedom. It sneaks up on you with these themes, letting you marinate in their weight long after the credits roll. One of the strongest themes is control and abuse of power. The film shows just how devastating it can be when someone takes control over another human being in the most extreme way imaginable. Dawn's control over Sara isn't just physical. It's psychological, emotional, and terrifyingly total. The film makes you feel that power imbalance so deeply that you almost start to understand how isolation and fear can warp a person's sense of reality. But it doesn't glorify the abuser or romanticize the victim's suffering. Instead, it highlights the complex layers of control, manipulation, and the small cracks of rebellion that form in those dark spaces. Connected to that is the theme of silence and secrecy. This movie shows how terrible things can stay hidden right under the noses of people who think they know everything about their own families. It's a chilling reminder of how much can be left unspoken in homes that look normal from the outside. The silence isn't just a lack of noise. It's complicity, denial, and fear wrapped into one. The film makes you think about the invisible walls people build to keep secrets safe. And what happens when those walls finally crumble? Then there's the raw theme of resilience. Sara isn't just a victim, she's a fighter. The story slowly peels back the layers of her character to reveal this incredible will to survive and protect her child, even in the bleakest conditions. This isn't about superhero strength or cinematic heroics. It's about quiet, everyday courage, the kind that doesn't always get noticed but is powerful enough to keep someone alive. The film honors that without ever turning it into a cliché. Family dynamics play a massive role in the thematic landscape. The film explores how family can be a source of safety and destruction simultaneously. Sara's parents, especially her mother, are trapped in their own webs of denial and helplessness. This adds another layer to the story, showing how families can fail to protect their own, not always out of malice but sometimes out of ignorance or fear. It's a brutal look at how complicated loyalty and love can get when secrets weigh heavy. Another fascinating theme is the loss of identity. Being trapped for years in a basement with no freedom to grow, no chance to be seen or heard. It's not just imprisonment of the body, but of the self. Sara's struggle is as much about holding on to who she is inside as it is about escape. The film explores how trauma can threaten to erase identity, but also how the human spirit fights to reclaim it. That battle is messy, painful, and heartbreakingly real. What's really impressive is how these themes aren't just told to you, they're felt. You don't get hit over the head with messages or moral lectures. Instead, the film invites you to sit with discomfort, to wrestle with the dark ideas it raises. You start asking yourself questions about trust, justice, and what it really means to protect someone. It's the kind of story that makes you want to look away but won't let you. The film also touches on the theme of hope, but in a subtle, almost rebellious way. Hope here isn't loud or triumphant. It's fragile and flickering like a candle in a storm. It's the small moments Sara clings to, the tiny acts of defiance that refuse to be crushed. And that makes the moments when hope bursts through all the more powerful. It reminds us that even in the worst situations, there's a spark that refuses to die. So while Girl in the Basement is undeniably heavy, its themes are layered and complex, inviting you to look beyond the surface horror into the deeper emotional and psychological truths it portrays. It's a film that doesn't shy away from the darkness but also refuses to let that darkness define the entire story. Instead, it challenges you to see the human spirit struggling inside that darkness, wrestling with power, silence, identity, and hope, all tangled up in one unforgettable journey. Visual effects and CGI ***. When it comes to Girl in the Basement, you might be surprised to learn that the visual effects and CGI play a much quieter role than you'd expect in a thriller like this. This isn't a film that leans on flashy digital wizardry or eye-popping effects to tell its story. Instead, the visual effects are more like secret agents working behind the scenes, doing their job so well you barely notice them, and that's exactly the point. Most of the film's impact comes from practical effects and clever set design. The basement itself is a star of the show, crafted with painstaking detail to feel claustrophobic, grimy, and utterly believable. The dirt on the walls, the flickering light bulbs, the cracked floor, these tactile elements ground the film in a gritty reality that CGI could never quite replicate. When you watch, you're not seeing a green screen or computer-generated backdrop. You're seeing a space that feels lived in, suffocating, and real, and that draws you in more deeply than any digital effect could. Now, where visual effects do come into play, it's mostly subtle stuff that enhances the mood without stealing focus. For example, shadows might be digitally enhanced to loom just a little darker or move a bit creepier, but these moments are so seamlessly integrated you don't question them for a second. They're not designed to wow you, they're designed to heighten your sense of unease, and they do it perfectly. It's like the film's secret weapon. Small digital tweaks that turn an already tense scene into something borderline unbearable. The CGI is sparing and strategically placed, avoiding the trap of becoming distracting or over the top. There's no jumping monsters or flashy supernatural effects here, just the quiet horrors of a trapped life. This restraint makes the film feel all the more real and terrifying because everything you see feels possible, not fantasy. When you don't get pulled out of the story by a bad CGI effect, you stay fully immersed in the tension and emotional stakes. One interesting thing is how practical effects and CGI team up. For example, Physical props and sets are sometimes subtly augmented with digital touches, like enhancing lighting or creating a slightly warped perspective to make spaces feel more claustrophobic. These seamless combos blur the lines between real and digital in a way that's almost invisible but incredibly effective. You don't even realize the mix is happening, you just feel the mood deepen. The makeup and practical effects also deserve a shout-out here. The portrayal of injuries, aging, and wear on the characters looks very natural. Nothing feels fake or exaggerated. That's important because it keeps the emotional impact authentic. If the injuries looked like cartoon wounds or the set looked fake, the whole story's weight would falter. But here, every scratch, every bruise tells a story, and the visuals help you believe it all. It's worth noting that the film's visual approach supports its themes. The grounded, practical look of the basement and the surroundings mirror the very real, very human horrors the story tackles. The effects don't take you to another world. They keep you firmly planted in a place you can imagine existing in your own neighborhood. That realism makes the suspense and emotional pain hit that much harder. So, in short, Girl in the Basement uses visual effects and CGI like a master of subtlety, quietly enhancing rather than shouting for attention. The practical effects provide the gritty texture and tactile reality that keeps you glued to the story, while the digital touches slip in to tweak your emotions just enough without breaking immersion. It's a careful balancing act, and the film pulls it off with finesse, letting you get lost in the raw, unsettling world it creates without ever making you feel like you're watching a digital playground. 11. Set design and locations ***. Step inside Girl in the Basement, and the first thing that grabs you isn't the dialogue or the acting, it's the world. The set design and locations here do an incredible job of dragging you right into the heart of the story. And not just because the basement is, well, a basement. It's because every detail feels painstakingly chosen to make you feel the story in your bones. The production design doesn't just create a backdrop. It builds a suffocating atmosphere that becomes a character itself. Let's start with the basement, because honestly, this space is the film's dark beating heart. It's not just a room. It's a labyrinth of fear, loneliness, and despair. The designers nail that cramped, dingy, claustrophobic vibe down to a terrifying science. Cracked walls, peeling paint, shadows that hug every corner, rusty pipes creeping along the ceiling. Every inch screams neglect and confinement. You can almost smell the damp, feel the cold, and sense the weight of years pressing down on the place. It's the kind of set where even the air feels heavy, and that heaviness pulls you right into Sara's nightmare. What's brilliant is how the basement isn't just a generic dark room. It's layered with details that hint at Sara's years of captivity. Makeshift furniture, scraps of personal belongings, worn-out bedding, and subtle signs of her attempts to hold on to some shred of normalcy or hope. These little touches don't just tell you where she is. They tell you who she is, what she's endured, and how she's survived. It's a museum of suffering but also resilience. And that emotional texture makes the set design truly unforgettable. Moving beyond the basement, the film also uses the house and other locations to add layers to the story. The house above ground is cold and sterile, almost lifeless, contrasting sharply with the chaos and horror downstairs. It's the perfect visual metaphor for the secrets hidden beneath a calm surface. The sterile decor and orderly rooms show a family trying to maintain appearances, but it all feels hollow, like a stage set for a dark drama rather than a real home. The exterior shots, quiet suburban streets, mundane family cars, an ordinary neighborhood, add another level of unease. The contrast between the everyday normalcy of these locations and the horrors happening inside the house is jarring in the best way. It reminds you that darkness can hide behind the most ordinary facades, making the story hit that much closer to home. Props play a surprisingly big role too. The smallest items, the locks, the chains, a worn photograph, a carefully hidden note, each carry emotional weight. They're not just props to fill the space but story elements that deepen the immersion. They show the careful planning of captivity and the little sparks of resistance. When you see these objects, you're invited to imagine the stories behind them, the moments they witnessed, the hope or despair they represent. What really sells the production design is how all these elements work together to create a seamless, believable world. Nothing feels out of place or overly theatrical. The attention to detail is so precise you forget you're watching a film and start feeling like a silent observer in a tragic reality. The lighting within the sets is also worth mentioning. It's not just about illumination but mood. The shadows stretch long. The flickers of light come from unreliable sources like a dying bulb or a single candle, making every scene visually charged with tension. In fact, the set design is so immersive that it shapes the entire viewing experience. The confined, oppressive basement makes you feel trapped alongside Sara, while the stark contrast of the outside world keeps you aware of the cruel divide between freedom and captivity. That interplay of spaces creates a visual rhythm that keeps you emotionally engaged and constantly on edge. So whether it's the claustrophobic basement that feels like a character screaming to be noticed or the cold, detached house that hides dark secrets behind pristine walls, the set design and locations in Girl in the Basement do more than just set the scene. They pull you deep into the story's emotional and psychological core. They make you live the film, not just watch it. 12. Dialogue and script ***. The dialogue in Girl in the Basement is one of those quiet engines driving the emotional weight of the film, but it's far from your typical flashy or over-the-top script. Instead, it feels carefully measured, sometimes sparse, sometimes sharp, with a real focus on making every word count. The writing knows this isn't a story where characters need to chatter endlessly. Instead, the silence and what's unsaid often speak louder than the actual dialogue, which makes the moments when people do talk all the more powerful. One of the fascinating things about the script is how natural the conversations feel. You won't find much in the way of witty banter or clever one-liners here. This is a heavy story, and the dialogue respects that. It's raw and real, capturing the tension between characters who are constantly walking a tightrope of fear, control, and desperate hope. The way characters speak to each other often reveals layers beneath the surface. The manipulation, the unspoken threats, the flickers of rebellion, and the fragile moments of trust. It's like every exchange is a mini battle or a secret handshake, and that gives the writing a thrilling edge. Emotional weight runs heavy throughout the script, and the dialogue carries that weight with quiet strength. When Sara speaks, her words aren't just lines, they're lifelines. The script captures the way trauma can shape speech, sometimes making it hesitant or fragmented, other times sharp and full of fierce determination. The way her voice changes over the course of the film subtly tracks her mental and emotional state, which adds a deeply human element to the writing. The scenes where Sara interacts with Dawn are especially charged. The dialogue there is loaded with tension, power dynamics, and manipulation, and the script does a brilliant job of showing how words can be weapons or chains. The conversations rarely feel straightforward. They're layered with double meanings, threats hidden in polite tones, and the constant push-pull of control. It's uncomfortable, unsettling, and absolutely gripping to watch. The supporting characters' dialogue adds important texture too. For example, the exchanges between family members carry a different kind of emotional punch, sometimes filled with denial, sometimes tinged with guilt or frustration. The script uses these moments to show how people cope in different ways, and the sharp contrasts in speech highlight the fractured nature of these relationships. While the film doesn't go for quotable one-liners that get repeated, it does have several standout moments where dialogue lingers in your mind because of how raw or revealing it is. These aren't just lines, they're emotional detonators that explode with meaning after you think about them. For example, a simple sentence about hope, freedom, or loss can feel like a whisper that echoes long after the scene ends. The pacing of the dialogue also deserves a mention. The script knows when to hold back and let silence fill the gaps, using quiet moments between lines to ramp up tension or give the audience space to breathe and reflect. It's a smart move that stops the film from feeling like a constant barrage of words, instead turning dialogue into a carefully crafted rhythm that matches the emotional highs and lows of the story. In short, the script of Girl in the Basement is a masterclass in subtlety and emotional precision. It's not about being flashy or clever. It's about creating a language that feels real, raw, and heartbreaking. The dialogue doesn't just tell you what's happening. It makes you feel every ounce of the pain, fear, and faint glimmers of hope buried beneath the surface. It's a writing style that respects the story's weight while keeping you hooked on every carefully chosen word. 13. Genre execution ***. Girl in the Basement dives into the thriller and drama genres with a heavy, intense vibe, but what makes it stand out isn't just ticking off the usual boxes. It's the way it plays with those genre conventions, sometimes leaning in hard, other times quietly flipping them on their head. If you're expecting your typical thriller filled with car chases or jump scares, this film says, "Hold on, let's try something different." It's a slow-burn psychological experience that pulls you into a deeply unsettling world, rather than slapping you in the face with over-the-top thrills. At first glance, the film seems to follow some classic thriller tropes: captivity, escape, dark family secrets, and the struggle for survival. But instead of racing through these elements like a checklist, it takes its time, unfolding the horror gradually and focusing heavily on emotional and psychological tension. That pacing choice alone helps it avoid the cliché trap of quick scare, quick escape, and instead it delivers a haunting, lingering sense of dread that stays with you. Where the film really subverts expectations is in its emotional depth. Thrillers often use emotion as a sidekick to action, but here, the drama takes center stage. The film isn't just about what happens to Sara. It's about how those events affect her inside, how trauma reshapes identity and relationships. This focus on emotional complexity within a thriller framework adds a layer of freshness that feels both smart and necessary. The balance between suspense and drama is handled with a delicate touch. The film doesn't try to mix in humor or lighten the mood with jokes. There's no comic relief because the story's too heavy, and honestly it wouldn't fit. Instead, the tension builds steadily through quiet, intense moments that keep you on edge without feeling exhausting. It's a different kind of suspense, one that sneaks up on you, relying on atmosphere and character psychology rather than fast-paced action or gore. Another interesting twist on genre conventions is how the film portrays the antagonist. In many thrillers, villains are either shadowy figures or caricatures of evil. Here, Don is deeply unsettling precisely because he feels disturbingly real. The script and direction avoid turning him into a monster from a horror flick. Instead, he's a chilling human with layers of manipulation, control, and twisted affection. This nuanced portrayal makes the villainy feel all the more impactful and complex, raising the stakes emotionally without relying on overused clichés. The film also plays with the idea of hope and resilience, which isn't always a given in thrillers that lean heavily into darkness. Rather than leaving you with just despair, it lets moments of resistance and strength break through the tension. This shift prevents the story from becoming one note and adds a layer of emotional balance that makes the drama feel lived in and genuine. Visually and stylistically, the film keeps things grounded, which is another genre-savvy choice. Instead of flashy visuals or stylized effects, it opts for a realistic look that matches the serious tone. This choice keeps you firmly rooted in the story's gritty world and avoids the distraction of genre gimmicks. In summary, Girl in the Basement respects its thriller and drama roots while confidently stepping off the beaten path. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel but tweaks the formula just enough to feel fresh and meaningful. The film balances suspense and emotional depth with careful pacing and real character complexity, making the genre feel less like a predictable box to check and more like a canvas for telling a powerful, unsettling story. 14. Social and cultural commentary ***. Girl in the Basement isn't just a gripping thriller. It's also a film that quietly packs a punch when it comes to social and cultural commentary, weaving real-world issues into its dark narrative with a careful hand. It tackles heavy themes that resonate far beyond the screen, and it does so in a way that feels organic, not preachy or forced, which is no small feat given the sensitive nature of its subject matter. One of the strongest threads running through the film is its examination of abuse and control within family dynamics, a topic that's unfortunately all too relevant today. Instead of treating this as just a plot device, the film digs deep into the psychology of captivity and manipulation, showing how power can be abused behind closed doors in the most devastating ways. It shines a light on the uncomfortable truth that evil can hide in plain sight, in families, in communities, in places that are supposed to be safe. This isn't just horror for entertainment's sake. It's a chilling reflection on real issues many people face but few talk about openly. The film also comments on the broader cultural tendency to ignore or dismiss victims, especially in domestic abuse cases. The isolation of the main character, Sara, and the way others around her respond or fail to respond, speaks volumes about societal blind spots. It subtly critiques how victims can be silenced or disbelieved, and how appearances can be deceiving. This adds a layer of frustration and urgency that lingers, prompting viewers to think about how such situations might be prevented or addressed in real life. What makes this commentary especially effective is how it's woven seamlessly into the story, rather than dropped in as heavy-handed messaging. You're not hit over the head with statistics or moralizing speeches. Instead, the themes emerge naturally through character interactions, plot developments, and the oppressive atmosphere. This approach respects the audience's intelligence and emotional engagement, making the message hit harder because it's earned rather than forced. The film also touches on themes of resilience and hope, which balance the darkness and prevent it from becoming overwhelming. It shows that even in the worst circumstances, the human spirit can fight back, sometimes in small, quiet ways. This hopeful undertone offers a subtle social commentary about survival and the importance of support systems, community awareness, and empathy. Gender roles and power imbalances are another layer beneath the surface. The film highlights how patriarchal control can manifest in extreme forms and how societal expectations sometimes trap victims even further. By focusing on a female protagonist's struggle for freedom and autonomy, the story shines a light on the gendered nature of abuse and the urgent need for societal change. Handling such intense and delicate topics is always a challenge, but the film walks that tightrope with sensitivity and respect. It avoids sensationalizing trauma or exploiting it for shock value, which is crucial for a story like this. Instead, it opts for an empathetic portrayal that honors the gravity of the issues while keeping the narrative gripping and human. In a way, Girl in the Basement acts as a mirror, reflecting back uncomfortable truths about society's failures and the quiet suffering of many. It encourages viewers to look beyond surface appearances, to listen to the silenced, and to question what we might overlook in our own lives. The film's social and cultural commentary doesn't just add depth, it challenges you to think, feel, and maybe even act differently after the credits roll. 15. Audience engagement ***. Girl in the Basement doesn't just tell a story, it drags you into its world and grabs hold of your emotions in a way that's hard to shake. From the very start, the film hooks you with its tension and mood, but it's the emotional resonance that really keeps you glued to the screen. You're not just watching Sara's nightmare unfold, you're feeling it alongside her, and that connection is what makes the whole experience so compelling. This film knows how to play with your emotions like a skilled musician. There are moments that catch you off guard, quiet scenes that suddenly swell with heartbreak or desperation, or tense exchanges where every word is loaded with fear or defiance. It's not just the big dramatic moments that hit hard, but the smaller, subtle ones where a glance, a pause, or a whispered line says more than words ever could. These moments build up layer by layer, making the emotional punches land deeper as the story progresses. And while this is an intense, often heavy film, it's not emotionally one note. You'll find yourself riding a roller coaster of feelings: shock at the reality of Sara's captivity, sorrow for her suffering, frustration at the way others fail to see the truth, and sometimes even sparks of hope and relief during moments of resistance or connection. The emotional depth means you don't just passively observe. You get invested in the characters' fates and find yourself holding your breath, hoping for some kind of breakthrough. The film also has a way of lingering in your mind long after the credits roll. It's the kind of story that invites discussion, whether it's about the harrowing nature of the plot, the performances, or the broader social issues it touches on. People might find themselves debating characters' motivations, the realism of the situation, or the ways the story reflects larger cultural problems. That kind of engagement is gold because it means the film has cracked open a conversation rather than just being background noise. Because of the emotional complexity and careful pacing, Girl in the Basement is also a film that rewards repeat viewings. Watching it again allows you to pick up on details and nuances you might have missed the first time, like subtle gestures, symbolic props, or the way the camera lingers on certain expressions. It's a film that reveals layers with each watch, making it a richer experience over time. While there's not much room for laughter or lightheartedness here, this isn't a comedy. It excels at creating moments of genuine human connection and raw emotion. That kind of authenticity pulls you in, and even when the story is tough to watch, you can't look away because you care. It's this powerful emotional engagement that turns a tense thriller into a deeply affecting experience. In short, the film doesn't just seek your attention. It earns your emotional investment, challenges your feelings, and leaves you thinking. That's why it doesn't just play out on screen but stays with you, sparking reflection, conversation, and a real emotional journey for anyone who watches. 15. Comparisons to similar films ***. When you line up Girl in the Basement alongside other films in the thriller and drama space, especially those that focus on captivity, survival, and psychological tension, it's like spotting a familiar face but with a twist that makes you do a double take. It definitely shares DNA with well-known titles like Röhm, The Captive, or even Prisoners, where the core revolves around confinement and the fight for freedom, but it brings its own distinct flavor that sets it apart. Unlike some thrillers that pile on the suspense with non-stop action or dramatic rescues, this film takes a more grounded, intimate approach. The tension is built less on flashy plot devices and more on the slow unraveling of Sara's world behind closed doors. It's not about chase scenes or explosive confrontations. It's about the quiet, creeping horror of control and isolation. That's a subtle but important difference that gives it a unique place among captivity dramas. Where others might sensationalize the trauma, this one keeps things raw and realistic, making the fear feel immediate and personal. In terms of tone, it leans more toward the heavy, emotional drama side of things than the adrenaline-pumping thriller category. If you're coming in expecting something like The Silence of the Lambs or Gone Girl, this might catch you off guard with how much it dwells on the emotional and psychological toll rather than on procedural thrills or mystery. It's more about what happens inside the characters' heads and hearts than about external plot twists. When you compare it to films in the director's repertoire, you can see a clear intention to dig deep into character psychology and social issues. The director's style favors slow builds and attention to small, meaningful details. Nothing is wasted, and every scene feels like it's adding to the emotional mosaic. This film fits into that pattern perfectly, but it also pushes boundaries by tackling such an intense subject matter with nuance and restraint. If you know the director's other works, this one might feel like a natural evolution, but if you don't, it can come across as a bold, thoughtful statement that doesn't shy away from discomfort. Compared to other movies that deal with family secrets or domestic abuse, Girl in the Basement stands out because it refuses to simplify the story into good versus evil. It complicates the characters, especially the antagonist, in ways that challenge your assumptions. This adds layers to the typical genre formula and keeps you guessing about motivations and outcomes in a way that feels fresh. It also breaks from the usual damsel in distress trope by giving Sara moments of quiet strength and resilience. This shift gives the film a more empowering edge compared to some genre peers where the victim stays passive for most of the story. It's not about over-the-top heroics, but the portrayal of survival as something gritty, messy, and deeply human. In comparison to mainstream thrillers that often rely on big budgets and elaborate set pieces, this film feels more like an indie production that punches above its weight through strong storytelling and performances. That low-key approach actually works in its favor, creating a claustrophobic and realistic atmosphere that would be harder to achieve with flashier effects or grandiose spectacle. So, while Girl in the Basement may share some themes and structures with other captivity dramas, it carves out its own niche by focusing on emotional authenticity, complex characters, and social commentary. It's like finding a well-worn path but taking a slightly different turn that reveals new, thought-provoking scenery. Whether you're a fan of the genre or just curious about intense psychological stories, this film offers a fresh take that holds its own against the heavy hitters, proving that sometimes subtlety and heart can shake up familiar territory in exciting ways. 17. Symbolism and metaphors ***. Girl in the Basement isn't just a straightforward thriller. Beneath the surface, it's packed with symbolism and metaphors that add rich layers of meaning to the story. The film uses visual cues and recurring motifs like puzzle pieces in a bigger picture, inviting you to look closer and uncover the deeper emotional and thematic currents running through the narrative. One of the most striking symbols is the basement itself. On the surface, It's a physical prison, a dark, confined space where Sara is held captive. But on a metaphorical level, the basement represents the hidden horrors lurking beneath the facade of normal family life. It's a place of secrets, repression, and buried trauma, almost like the unconscious mind, where painful memories are locked away and forgotten, yet still exert a powerful influence. This setting becomes a powerful visual metaphor for how abuse can be hidden in plain sight, trapped below the surface of everyday existence. Another subtle motif is the use of light and darkness throughout the film. Darkness often envelopes the basement scenes, emphasizing Sara's isolation and the oppressive nature of her captivity. But flickers of light, sometimes a small crack in a door, a sliver of sunlight, signal moments of hope and resistance. This play of light and shadow isn't just atmospheric. It mirrors the emotional tug-of-war between despair and the will to survive, making the viewer feel the push and pull of Sara's struggle in a visceral way. Objects in the film also carry symbolic weight. Simple things like a locked door, a broken toy, or a scratched photograph aren't just props. They're markers of lost innocence, control, and fragmented identity. For example, a locked door is a recurring image that echoes both physical imprisonment and the emotional barriers between characters. The repeated focus on these items gently reminds us of what's at stake without spelling everything out explicitly. The relationship dynamics themselves carry metaphorical meaning. Don's control over Sara goes beyond the literal. He embodies toxic authority and the destructive impact of power when wielded without empathy or respect. Their interactions can be read as a microcosm of larger societal issues, such as patriarchy and abuse, making their personal story a metaphor for systemic problems that many people face but few confront openly. Even the pacing and silence in the film act as metaphors. Long stretches of quiet can represent the suffocating stillness of trauma, the way pain can freeze time inside a person's mind. It's as if the film uses silence as a language to communicate what words cannot, capturing the weight of unspoken suffering and the difficulty of escape, both physically and emotionally. Subtle visual cues, like the recurring image of Sara looking through small windows or cracks, symbolize her yearning for freedom and a world beyond her confinement. These glimpses of the outside world remind viewers that even when trapped, there's a desire to connect, hope to cling to, and a future to imagine. Overall, the film's symbolism and metaphors don't just decorate the story. They deepen it, layering meaning in ways that reward close attention. They invite viewers to peel back the surface and engage not only with what's happening but with what it represents emotionally and culturally. The result is a film experience that operates on multiple levels, turning a tense thriller into a meditation on trauma, resilience, and the unseen battles that happen behind closed doors. Franchise or historical context ***. Girl in the Basement isn't part of a sprawling franchise or cinematic universe, but that actually works to its advantage, allowing the film to stand on its own as a tightly focused, intense experience. Without the baggage of sequels or spin-offs, it dives straight into its story with a sharp, unflinching gaze, which makes its impact feel immediate and personal. There's no need to understand a backstory from previous installments or worry about where it fits into a larger saga. This film is a self-contained world of suspense and emotion. However, while it's not part of a franchise, the film does echo a broader historical and cultural conversation about abuse, captivity, and survival, tapping into real-world events and stories that have captured public attention over the years. It feels like a fictionalized lens on true cases that have made headlines, capturing the haunting reality of people trapped in horrifying situations by those closest to them. In that sense, it serves as a kind of modern-day parable or cautionary tale, reflecting society's ongoing struggle to recognize and address hidden abuse. The historical context here isn't about a distant past or a period drama, but about contemporary issues rooted in today's world. The film immerses you in the psychological landscape of captivity and control, giving a vivid portrait that feels painfully accurate and chillingly believable. This grounded approach helps the story avoid sensationalism, and instead offers a sobering reflection on what happens behind closed doors in many homes. It's like the film takes on the role of an uncomfortably honest witness to a dark chapter that history is still writing. In terms of accuracy, the film leans on realistic details and careful research, which makes the portrayal of captivity feel authentic rather than exaggerated. The claustrophobic setting, the emotional toll on the victim, and the complicated power dynamics all ring true to documented cases, adding weight and urgency to the narrative. It doesn't glamorize or oversimplify the horror, instead respecting the real-life experiences that inspired it. While the film doesn't create a historical timeline or document events chronologically, it succeeds in capturing the essence of a very real social problem in a way that's immersive and thought-provoking. It's almost like a snapshot of a larger, ongoing issue, giving viewers a front-row seat to the emotional and psychological realities faced by many victims. Because it isn't tied down by franchise expectations or historical dramatization, Girl in the Basement is free to concentrate fully on the human story and the themes it wants to explore. This singular focus allows it to craft a narrative that's as intense and haunting as any chapter in history, but told through the lens of personal experience and emotional truth rather than broad historical strokes. So, even though it's not part of a series or a historical epic, the film situates itself within a larger cultural and social context that feels current and important. It's a reminder that some stories don't need sequels or grand historical settings to resonate. They just need honesty, attention to detail, and a fearless commitment to telling difficult truths. 18. Budget and box office ***. Girl in the Basement walks an interesting tightrope when it comes to budget and box office. It's one of those films where you might be surprised by how much it achieves without the blockbuster price tag. The production budget wasn't sky-high like some big studio thrillers, but it was clearly invested wisely. Instead of pouring money into flashy effects or exotic locations, the budget was funneled into creating a claustrophobic, intense atmosphere that feels both authentic and gripping. This meant careful set design, strong casting, and thoughtful cinematography rather than eye-popping spectacle. When you watch the film, you can see the smart choices in how resources were allocated. The basement setting is kept simple but effective. Every detail seems purposeful, contributing to that suffocating feeling of captivity without needing expensive CGI or sprawling sets. The lighting, props, and sound design all punch well above their weight, creating tension and mood that rival much more expensive productions. It's a great example of how a modest budget, when used creatively, can deliver high production quality that draws you in and keeps you hooked. Now, financially, Girl in the Basement didn't break box office records or become a mega hit with massive ticket sales, but that wasn't necessarily the goal. Its appeal was more niche, drawing viewers who appreciate gritty, psychological dramas rather than blockbuster crowds. It found a solid audience through streaming platforms and video-on-demand services where its impact was more about word-of-mouth and emotional connection than mass marketing blitzes. Marketing for the film was subtle. No viral campaigns or huge advertising budgets, but it leaned into the story's intensity and real-life resonance to attract viewers. This strategy meant it didn't explode in the box office, but it also avoided fading into obscurity. Audience reception played a big role in its steady climb in popularity among thriller fans who appreciate its grounded approach and emotional depth. Interestingly, because it didn't rely on big studio hype, the film had the chance to build a loyal following organically. Viewers who connected with its story often recommended it to friends, which kept the interest alive longer than some flashier movies that burn bright and fade fast. That slow burn approach might not translate to blockbuster numbers, but it gives the film staying power and respect in its genre. So, while it's not a Hollywood juggernaut in terms of financial success, Girl in the Basement proves you don't need millions of dollars to make a movie that feels rich, compelling, and worth watching. The smart use of budget combined with targeted marketing and a clear understanding of its audience helped the film carve out its own space, showing that quality storytelling and production values can shine even without a blockbuster budget or massive box office haul. 20. Where to watch ***. If you're curious about Girl in the Basement and wondering where you can dive into this intense thriller, you're in luck because the film is widely accessible, but how you watch it can really shape your experience. While it didn't have a huge theatrical release like the summer blockbusters, it did play in select theaters, especially in limited screenings or film festivals, so if you're the kind of viewer who loves catching indie or niche films on the big screen, keep an eye out for local art house cinemas or special showings that might pop up. For most people, streaming and digital rental are the golden tickets to experiencing this film. It's available on several popular streaming platforms, which means you don't need to wait for a DVD or hunt down a cable channel airing it at a random hour. Whether you subscribe to services like Amazon Prime Video, Vudu, or Apple TV, you can either rent or buy it digitally, putting it right at your fingertips whenever the mood strikes you. And because the film thrives on atmosphere and emotional tension, watching it in a dark, quiet room on a decent screen with good sound will really enhance the experience. This isn't just background noise material. It demands your full attention. If you prefer physical media, there might be DVD or Blu-ray editions available depending on your region, which often come with bonus features like behind-the-scenes footage, interviews, or director's commentary. These extras can give you a deeper understanding of the film's making and enrich your appreciation, especially if you're a cinephile who loves peeling back the layers of production. One fun tip for watching Girl in the Basement is to treat it almost like a thriller event. Gather a small group of friends who appreciate intense dramas, dim the lights, and let yourselves get absorbed into the story without distractions. The film's strength lies in its ability to hold you captive emotionally, much like the character in the basement, so creating that immersive environment makes the tension and suspense hit even harder. Also, since the movie's themes are heavy and the story intense, it's the kind of film you might want to watch when you're in the right headspace, not right before bed or when you're juggling a million tasks. Giving it your full attention rewards you with a gripping experience that's hard to forget. In short, Girl in the Basement is easy to access across multiple platforms, but how you watch it, whether streaming at home, renting digitally, or catching a rare theater screening, can really shape how much the story grabs you. So pick your favorite cozy spot, maybe grab some snacks, and prepare to be pulled into a dark, emotional journey that stays with you long after the credits roll.